Well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to our first, I don't know, been trying to name it. Maybe that's a new contest we can have for the church. Our first coronavirus Sunday, our first whatever. Just come up with something if you would, and maybe we can have some fun with this. But welcome to our first online time together, our first video recording. Right now we've been working hard. We've got the makeup on, got the hair comb, got the lighting set up everywhere, got the sound all ready to go, and actually none of that's true. We just got an iPhone on a stand and our sound that we have normally. So right now I'm literally staring at the back of one of our music stands with my iPhone sitting on it. So we're been here this morning trying to adjust and get the best that we can. And truthfully, if there is something that you feel like you want to share that might make it a little better, whether it's sound or video or whatever it may be, just let us know. We're going to keep working with this because, again, we're new to it. We're figuring it all out. Before we really jump into what I want to share today, I do want to say thank you to those that worked very hard this week. There has been a lot of people doing a lot of things, putting in a lot of work beyond what they would even normally do, just to try and make sure that this moment happened on time, just to make sure that the website was up and running, just to make sure that the YouTube channel was going, just to make sure that the emails got out and the online giving was going. So I just want to say thank you. Thank you to Leanne for her extra time in writing stuff up, to Keziah Rothschild, to Michelle Post, to the council for still meeting and working and trying to figure out next steps and how to walk through this process, to Renee and to Bill and Shelley Allen, who are here with me this morning and running this sound and being able to make sure that this gets out, and just many others, some from afar that weren't here this morning that have been helping with advice and walking us through this. I just want to say thank you to everybody that's been helping. But today, the biggest one I want to say thank you to is my son, is Decaden, because he has been up here a lot more than he wanted to be with me this week. And that website would not be put together if he didn't work on it all week. This YouTube channel would not be up and running if he didn't get it put together and use the stuff that he knows that a lot of times I guess maybe I'm getting after him for with all the technology things, but be able to use those and know how to put it together and to get us online. So one of the advantages to me, one of the great things is I've gotten to have more time with my son working on this, and I'm proud of him. I'm thankful for him, and I'm grateful that he worked this hard to get this up. I have to tell you, on his website, he had something a little different than what we see. It was a little more modern, a little more techy. It was really neat, and he really worked hard on that, and I had to actually go in and tell him, okay, now simplify it. So he's put a lot in there, and I think he'll be able to help kind of keep it up and progress it and work on it and just see it shift over time too. But right now, I just want to say thank you, Tim, and just everybody else that, again, that's been working on this. And it's still a work in progress. So please have a little grace through this, just a little more patience as we work out the kinks. I found out that there might be some issues with the online giving for some. I know that the website's got a few little kinks that we ran into, whether in certain different areas, so we're trying to get that fixed. And Faith Life, the group that we're working with, has been awesome too. They've answered our calls, but they're overwhelmed because there's so many churches trying to use them at the same time, and they're trying to answer those calls. And actually, they're working from home themselves. So they're trying to just work through the process while helping churches all over the country on there. So those little things that may not happen or may not seem to be working right, we are going to keep working on it this week. We're also going to be rolling out the next step of where we can have a little deeper communication with each other and stay more connected throughout this process. So be looking for more of these videos, be looking for more emails. And that's the last thing. We're finding that some people are not getting the emails that have been on our email list, and we're afraid what's happening as we add more, it's kicking some off. So we're trying to figure that out too, but if you have not been getting the emails, please somehow, some way let us know so that we know who's not actually receiving them, and we can get back to getting that figured out. Get that figured out also. But like I said, it's a work in process, but I'm just so thankful for everybody that's helped get it put together and get us to this point, this day, so we can at least do this right now. I say it when you're here, and I'll say it when you're not, when you're wherever you are. We have an awesome church family. and we are very blessed, and I'm very grateful of who we have and who I get to worship with and be a part of. And that's why I really am missing you all right now. This is not fun. This is not something I want to do for a long time, for long term. I was tempted to, if I could find a picture of all your faces out here and just post you on the back of this stand so I can be looking at it, because I miss you. There's something not right about showing up here and there's just no cars, no people, it's just a building. It really helps you realize what the church really is and what it's not. So I do miss you, and I'm looking forward to us being able to get back together. Now I can tell you, I've been praying that the same Holy Spirit who meets with us when we're together is going to be meeting with us right now. I've been praying that whole promise of where 2 or 3 are gathered, that He would be in our midst, that would extend online also, that would work through a YouTube channel, that would work through a website, or however it is you're going to view it. I've just been praying that even though we're not in this place physically, that He would be meeting with us as we're together in many other ways that we can right now with what we're going through. I've been listening to a lot of worship this week, and I'll share a little bit more why that is in a minute, but one that's really been going through my mind a lot, and I encourage you to just pick that up and be listening together. But one that's been going through my mind a lot and I've been listening to, is the song Surrounded, Fight My Battles by Michael W. Smith, because I feel like it's so fitting right now. That line that says, "It may look like I'm surrounded, but I'm surrounded by you." And I believe that's true for all of us right now, wherever we're at. So many things are coming at us, so many voices, so many messages. Feels like we're surrounded, a virus, all this kind of stuff, but we are still surrounded by Him. So here's some areas, though, where we can take advantage of this today. And this is going to be weird, because as I'm sitting here talking, text messages are coming in. So if I get a little distracted, bear with us a little bit, because people are popping things on here. But here's where we can take advantage of the process, and maybe you're going to enjoy this. You have all the power right now to turn me up if you can't hear me, to turn me down if I'm too loud, and if you're just sick of what I'm saying, you even have the ability to turn me off. So you have all the power at your disposal right now. So there are some real advantages for you. You can also, before it starts or after it's done, or even if you want to stop it, you can stop and worship yourself, and you even have the opportunity to worship to your own preference of music, to your own style, in your own way. So there are some advantages to this. If you want to fall asleep, you can even do that. And the best part is, if you want to come back and find out what you missed. See, there's so many opportunities that we have right now with this. So take advantage of those, be happy for them, and use them for what's going to work best for you, wherever you're sitting, wherever you're watching, and whatever you're doing right now. With those advantages, though, there's one thing I do ask for you to do, and that is to hit pause on this in a minute. I'm going to ask that before we go any further, before I share what's on my heart today, that you would just hit pause on the video, and you would stop wherever you are, with whoever you're with, and that you would just stop and you would pray. I'm going to take a few seconds, a moment, just be silent to give you that opportunity to pause, but obviously it goes as long as you want it to be. But if you're with your family, push pause and stop and pray with them. If you're on your own, push pause and stop and just talk to God. But would you just for a moment push pause on this and pray and ask Him to open your ears, open your hearts, open your minds, and speak to you what He needs to speak to you today. So push pause now and have a moment of prayer. Okay, today, what I want to share with you, I've had so many messages going through my mind, so many different things that I've been wanting to share, so many different, how do I share this and what do I share for the first Sunday that we're dealing with everything going on and we're in this situation and we're in this format. And honestly, where I came back to was, I just want to have one of those, as I've walked through this from the heart, talks to you today. Instead of trying to have some kind of a message like we're used to, I just want to share, as I've been walking through this journey, the things that have been happening and really how God has been working on me, and have you take that, however you need to where you are, because I believe what he's been sharing with me is not supposed to be just for me, but it's something he's sharing with me that he's hoping that everybody is going to be able to catch on and hear and understand. It's not going to be mind-blowing, but it's been very much a reminder to me. This message is for those who say that they are followers of him, that believe him, that call themselves Christians, that are in church on a regular basis. That's who this is for. If you don't believe him, I want everybody to believe him. I believe that's how we should be living our lives. That's who should be the Lord of our life. That's who should be guiding us and moving us through any situation. But if you're not, these may be hard to digest. I'd encourage you to consider them anyway, but especially for those that say that he is their leader, that he is their Lord, that he's their Father, that he's their God. That's who this is for, because that's where he was speaking to me, reminding me that he is my God. I think it was Tuesday morning. I woke up with more anxiety than I've had in a long, long time. Actually, that's what woke me up. I laid in bed, and it was like the magnitude of what was really going on and what that meant for what needed to be done, and just all the things that went through my head woke me up, and I could not sleep. I had been going through this whole thing with it's no big deal, it's going to be okay, things are under control, maybe it's not even as bad as everybody makes it out to be, and it's not, just all this thing is going, we're going to be okay. But for some reason, Tuesday morning, I woke up and that was not going through my head. I laid in bed and I struggled, had a hard time breathing, sweating, just having a hard time, just everything that needed to get done in such a short amount of time. I just felt like I was being attacked, and worry and anxiety was coming over me. So I laid in bed and I tried to pray it off. Maybe I was actually just not wanting to get up, but I was laying there saying, God, take this away, and just trying to pray it off and trying to process everything through my head that was taking place, and try and maybe even say, okay, let's prioritize and let's organize this, and all those things that I could do, but it just wasn't working. It was almost just making it worse. So I got up and I went out to our living room and I started the coffee and sat in the chair and tried to pray some more and tried to open my Bible and just start reading, but I was in such anxiety, honestly, at the moment. I wasn't even sure where to start reading, and then I thought maybe I just need to write it down, because it was just, honestly, it was weird. I don't experience that very much, but that morning, everything just hit me, and I was struggling with just the feelings, and there was probably more fear than I would admit was there, and there was more worry because I don't like worry, and there was more worry there, and just thinking, how in the world are we going to get this done? And as I continued to just try and find things to read and pray and look through, I got onto my email, which usually isn't a good idea, but I got on my email, and the Bible app, first, it doesn't send it every day, but that day had sent something on there with some thoughts. And in the midst of those thoughts, there was a passage of Scripture, a moment in the ministry in the life of Jesus that it brought up, that it referred to. And for whatever reason, I felt like I needed to go look that up again. And I encourage you to open to it right now if you would too. It's actually in Matthew chapter 8. We'll read it together, but it's in Matthew chapter 8. And again, here's an advantage. If it takes a minute to get there and I go too fast, just pause me for a second and get yourself there. But Matthew chapter 8, it's a moment where Jesus has been doing, as we say often Jesus did on a regular basis. He's been out healing people, he's been out teaching, he's been out being challenged by those who opposed him. He was just walking around doing his thing, which was not easy, and was constantly under pressure, and he was constantly under attack. He was constantly having people needing him and reaching for him and wanting him and wanting to use him, even though they may not have truly understood. He just got done healing a bunch of folks, then challenging a young man on what it meant to follow him, and eventually got to a point where I believe he was tired. In fact, if you read the account in Mark and Luke, it really seems to refer to the fact that he was just ready to call it a day for a while and to get away for a bit from it all. And so in Matthew chapter 8, verse 23, it says he got into the boat. In another one, he tells the disciples to get into a boat, but it says he got into the boat and his disciples followed him. Suddenly, and you can assume they pushed off and they went out to the lake. And as they were out there, suddenly a furious storm came up on the lake, so that the waves swept over the boat. But Jesus was sleeping. The disciples went and they woke him, saying, "Lord, save us. We're going to drown." Well, he replied, and you got to imagine, woke up a little groggy, probably rubbed his eyes, whatever it was, looked around at them, and heard them freaking out. Heard them in their anxiety and their stress, and said, "You of little faith, why are you so afraid?" Then he got up and rebuked the winds and the waves, and it was completely calm. The men were amazed, and they asked, "What kind of man is this? Even the winds and the waves obey him." That right there calmed me down when I really stopped and reflected. That was like God getting through to me in that moment. Because what he asked me was the same question that Jesus asked the disciples. Why are you so afraid? And the truth is, I wasn't being asked that as though it was a rebuke or a shame on you. It was, okay, I hear you, you've been praying, you've been talking to me, but why are you so afraid? And it made me have to stop and think about it, which I think happened here. You know, when I read this story, I don't often stop and think about the significance of it. A storm, a heavy, heavy storm came upon those disciples and those guys that were on that boat. You know, what's a storm? If you really just stop and think about it, I went through Webster's, go up and look it up. I even looked up the definition of it. But a storm is basically a powerful force that comes upon us whether we want it or not, whether we caused it or not, but comes into our lives upon us in some way and is a powerful force that we can do nothing about as far as stopping. We can prepare for it, we can try and work through it, we can try and hunker down, we can try and take cover, but we can't stop when it comes at us. And when things like that happen in our lives, we freak out like these guys did. We struggle with that reality because we like to have things under our control. We like to be able to do things that we can handle. But sometimes storms, in many different ways, powerful forces actually come into our lives. When you actually look up that definition, the definition of a storm is a disturbance of the atmosphere marked by wind and usually by rain, snow, hail, sleet, thunder, or lightning. And that's what we think of. But as you continue to read the definition of a storm, it also says it's a serious disturbance of any element of nature, a disturbed or agitated state, a sudden or violent commotion, a tumultuous outburst, a sudden heavy influx or onset. Does that sound like anything we're dealing with right now? It doesn't have to be the nature storm that we think of right away, especially living in Kansas. It can be any of those things that come into our life that's a force that's more powerful than us that we may not have even started, but we definitely can't stop, we can't control, and it makes its way through. That's what these guys were facing. And so when they ran into this, they did what we so often do, and they freaked out, and they were afraid of literally dying from this particular storm. So they go and they wake up Jesus, which we'll get to that in just a second, because that's always odd to me that he was sleeping. But they go and wake up Jesus, and they freak out and say, "We're going to die." And his question is, what are you afraid of? I don't think, again, that was necessarily a rebuke. Maybe it was. I know the day that I read it this week, it didn't come to me as a rebuke. It was him simply saying, okay, I hear you. So what exactly is it you're afraid of? And he made me sit there and have to name that. And I think the reason he did that is so he could say, okay, now then, watch me go to work. And show you that even though you cannot control this, I still can. Jesus has the power over things that we cannot control, over those storms that come into our life. And in this moment, this real life moment in history, he proved it by stopping a storm, a deadly storm. I don't know about you, but I don't know when the last time was you stepped out on the back porch and a storm came and said, stop, and the whole thing stopped. But Jesus has that ability to stop and to work through and to protect us and just get us through the storms in our lives. And it was comforting to me for him to ask, what are you afraid of? And be able to tell him, and then for him to be able to remind me, hey, I've got this. Let's walk through this together. In fact, you know what? I said, I think it's weird that he's sleeping. I've always thought that was weird. I think the reason he was sleeping, because he wasn't worried. He knew he had it under control. It wasn't like he was surprised when he woke up and there was a storm. He's Jesus. He knows what's going to happen. You know, in the same way, he's not surprised this is happening. He knew it was coming. He did not pull out his phone that morning that this all started and get the alert that everybody else did and go, oh my goodness, I didn't see that coming. He knew. He knows. And he's got power beyond anything we have, that he can take care of it. Those storms that are in our lives. And he reminded me that he can walk me through this and he can walk you through this also. But he might be asking that question, what are you afraid of? And want you to name that out loud, just like the guys did in this story. Name that out loud so you can say, okay, then let's deal with that and get you through. Now in the process, he also took me to just 3 different things through this week, not on that moment, but as we've walked through this together, there are 3 things that I felt that he's impressed upon me, whether it be through other people, through things I've read, through just sitting and just talking and listening and whatever. There's 3 different things that he's impressed on me. And because we don't want to have you sit in front of your TV for an hour this morning, I might try and put these out in a little more detail throughout this week. But there's 3 things that he's really helped me think about so that I don't just go through this, but so that I'll grow through it. That in this moment, because I wrote it in that email I sent out, I truly believe that this is an opportunity for us to be stronger than we even were before as followers of him. That he has an opportunity to work on those of us who say we're his hands and feet and that we love him. This is an opportunity for him to build us up. But there's 3 things that I've been working on. I want to just lay them out for you and challenge you on it. And then when this is done, please don't just walk away and make lunch. Sit with your family and discuss it amongst yourselves on how it looks for you. Sit with whoever. Stop and contemplate on your own on where you're at in this process and how it might affect you. But here's the 3 things that I feel like he has impressed upon me and I've been thinking through and trying to work through throughout this week. The first is he gave me permission to admit, to grieve, and to process or allow a process of the loss and the hurts and the disappointments and the anxiety and the uncertainty that comes with it. Many times in the church, or just even in the U.S., or especially Western Kansas, where everybody's just going to be tough, we don't want to look at those things that hurt us and that leave us uncertain and confused and anxious. We want to just kind of shove them aside, power through, be tough, not admit it, and just, we're going to make our way through this. I think he wants us to actually kind of do what was done in there, answer the question, why do you feel this way? But in order to do that, we've got to admit that it's there. I saw it in this community. The first moment that I think this whole thing really hit Joaquin was when we got the call that the state basketball tournament had been canceled. You cannot convince me that people weren't bothered by that. That's that first moment where there was anger and there was confusion and there was sadness, all of it justified. But it was there, and it will do no good to just pretend like it's no big deal. We need to work through that. It's continued to go on from there, from phone calls with the school change as things come down, from people with their businesses, vacation plans. I'm supposed to be in Portland, Oregon right now, getting ready to go to church somewhere with my brother and his family, and we're not there, obviously. And that hurt. That was really hard for us to comprehend in the process, because one of the reasons we're taking this trip was to see somebody that I've been wanting to visit with for a while, and we don't know how many more times we're going to have to be able to do this while Caden's with us. To make that trip back to people that we care about, that have meant so much to us. So it wasn't just missing a quick little vacation. This is something we were really looking forward to, and it hurts. And we need to admit it. And we need to grieve it, and we need to process it, and we need to walk through it, not just pretend like it's no big deal, we're going to be tough, but to own up to it. I read on Facebook yesterday that there's a family where the husband got laid off because of what this has done to the business until this whole thing is over, and now they're living on one income for a family of 6. That's hard to deal with. That leaves somebody confused and angry and anxious. Don't just shove it aside. Don't say, I'm just going to fight through, it's no big deal. Process it, grieve it, walk through it. Pete Cesario of the Emotionally Healthy series and books and stuff that he has, he actually encourages people in times like this to do three things: to pay attention to what we're feeling, wait for the confusing in-between time, and then eventually let the old birth the new. Because when we actually walk through and allow ourselves to feel what we're feeling and admit to it and go through the process, we can actually come out of the other side stronger and with something new within us that we didn't even have before. James, the brother of Jesus, confirms this, who was taught by Jesus himself, confirms this when he wrote, "Consider it pure joy, my brothers and sisters, whenever you face trials of many kinds, because you know that the testing of your faith produces perseverance. Let perseverance finish its work so that you may be mature and complete, not lacking anything." These difficult times are actually good for us because they can grow us, but we can't just pretend like they're not there or tell other people to pretend like they're not there. We need to admit them, pay attention to them, process them, walk through them. Answer the question that Jesus asked. What are we afraid of? What is it specifically that's leading us to this place? Once we do that, the second one, this is the one that's been real big for me, is we can now, in this time, as we're walking through that, use that opportunity to recenter ourselves in ways that we've been too busy to do. There's a lot of things we talk about that we need to do, should do, ought to do, whatever, but we're always so busy that it's hard to do that. Right now, we're just stopped in our tracks. Some of us are literally quarantined to our homes. What better time to stop and recenter as he walks us through this? A friend, I saw this on Facebook the other day, a friend wrote this on there. It said, Satan, in the words of Satan, says, "I will cause anxiety, fear, and panic. I will shut down businesses, schools, places of worship, sports events, and I will cause economic turmoil." That's the goal that thing was saying, that Satan would be saying right now. And then underneath it, it has a quote from Jesus where he says, "I will bring together neighbors, restore the family unit. I will bring dinner back to the kitchen table. I will help people slow down their lives and appreciate what really matters. I will teach my children to rely on me and not the world. I will teach my children to trust me and not their money and material resources." In other words, he'll teach us to recenter on what's important, to actually put action to his kingdom life teaching, to seek first the kingdom and his righteousness, and all these other things will be added as well. Again, in our own family, we experienced that. And it was one of those where it was a slap upside the head for me. We have a friend close to our family that's getting ready to go overseas. I mean, we'll see what happens with this, but their plan was to go overseas for 6 months and to teach overseas others about the love of Jesus and just teach them life. And we really wanted to support them in this. They're asking for help financially to do it. Leanne talked to me and said, "I'd really like to help them," but I was struggling with that. We do support other missionaries. We have a child that we support, not our own, but we have a child that we support through compassion. We have the tithe that we give to the church on a monthly basis. We have all that going on. I'm thinking, where are we going to come up with more to do this? All I kept thinking was, man, I'm going to have to pull out of somebody else's in order to give to them, and that doesn't feel right either. Or I'm just going to give them only so much that it doesn't really do any good. And I was just struggling with all of that. And in the midst of it, for whatever reason, again, I cannot explain it. But as I sat there and I walked through this process, and because that's all I really had to do was sit there and walk through this process, there was a moment where just the thought hit my head, what about your cable? See, right now, we've come to find out that most of our time in front of the TV is spent watching sports. Well, what's not happening right now? And the truth is, without sports being on, we've hardly had our TV on, because other than a few shows that we like to watch here or there, There just hasn't been a reason to. And when we have, and in the past when we've had cable, we realized that, man, we just had that on just mindlessly watching stuff we didn't even care about just to pass the time. And it dawned on me, there is no reason for us to be carrying a cable bill, especially right now. Why are we hanging on to this? And so our family went through that process of actually cutting out our cable bill this week and cutting out the cable. Now, I've tried to make a deal with God that He'll let us have it back when football season starts, because the Chiefs will be back on, and we're looking forward to that. But for the moment, we don't need that cable. That money can go to somebody who's going to do something a lot better than what that TV is going to do for me and my family. But it took this moment to really stop and let Him work on me to recenter me and us to get to that place. That wasn't us trying to do something heroic. That was God going, wait a minute. Here's a chance to reprioritize. Maybe there's other things we need to think about in our lives that we need to be reprioritizing, taking this time and this opportunity to do it. You know, we sit here Sunday after Sunday, Bible study after Bible study, prayer group after prayer group, all that kind of stuff, and we claim that Jesus is first in our lives. Now's the opportunity to stop and look and see, is He? Is He really the most important? Or is there something else that I've given my life to beyond Him? I've had people bothered with the whole Lent, not having breakfast and all that kind of stuff, the Lent breakfast, and that's a bummer to miss out on those. But the purpose of Lent was to give something up that is controlling our lives, to be reminded that that's not what needs to control it. It's God that should have control of our lives. So right now, maybe He's forcing a time on us where we can stop and do some real Lent-type thinking in our lives and recenter ourselves in ways that we've been too busy to do. And then finally, the last thing said, don't just sit there and walk through this process. That's good. Don't just sit there and find ways to recenter, though that's good. But also use this time to go and make somebody else's day and life better. It's going to be real easy to just hole up, to be afraid to do anything, to be afraid to be around anybody, to be afraid of what's going on, that we become way too focused on ourselves and forget that there's people all around us, probably in situations worse than we are, with less than we have, that need somebody to brighten their day and be hope during this time. Miles McPherson, he's a pastor of a church in San Diego. He's also a motivational speaker. He's a former NFL football player. Has this quote. He says, social distance doesn't have to be emotional distance. We can still care for other people and check up on other people. He said, let's take advantage of this opportunity to look out for our neighbor and see what we can do for other people. I think that's great. And that's not just some brand new idea. Jesus already gave that to us. In fact, we just talked about it last Sunday here when He said, and even in these times, He still wants us to do unto others as we would want done unto us. To love our neighbors as we would love ourselves. A virus, an epidemic, a quarantine, a lockdown doesn't excuse us from still following that golden rule. We can still be looking for ways to make somebody else's day better. Could it get more and more limited as to what we're physically allowed to do? It sure could, but you know what? Maybe God will start utilizing the creative sides of our brains and maybe show us new ways that we can be loving and ministering to other people that, again, we've been too busy to even try and think about or figure out how to do. So now's not the time to implement the iron rule. And because we're in better shape than someone else, say, I'm not going to worry about you, I'm going to take care of myself because I'm good to go. Now's not the time to implement the wooden rule, where we say, I'm just going to do to you as you've done unto me. Now's not even time to implement the silver rule of just not doing to others what we wouldn't want done to us. Now's the time to make that rule golden and truly do unto others as we would want done to us. Make somebody else's day better. Tina put this on a Facebook post, I think for our church. I'm not real good with Facebook, but she put something out there the other day after a council meeting to say, let's start a conversation of ideas of things we can do. People have already started responding. Someone said, let's start a Facebook page of prayer needs and encouragement for our community. Another said, let's support the local business in a family in need. Maybe purchase a gift card and donate it to a family in need. Let's offer to deliver for one of our local restaurants that does not normally deliver. And I'll tell you now, Jake and Chet's, in fact, I kind of think I just got a text from them. Jake and Chet's has asked for help because they're not normally a delivery group. We're going to want them here when we're done with this. Let's help them through this of being those that will deliver. Someone said, let's offer to shop for a neighbor who is in the at-risk category. Or let's just place money in the fund at Malay's Market for the food boxes that they've been doing down at the Methodist Church, which has been amazing for people. One of our own, Michelle Hayflicker, is offering to do communion for those who would like to have it brought to them because they can't get out. And then someone just mentioned a simple one that I don't want to just stop here, but can always be done, and that's pray for those who are facing real consequences of this situation. Whatever it is, let's find a way to make their day better. And if we think it's too hard, we better go back up and start walking through that process and ask ourselves why. And then recentering ourselves where we need to be, because it's possible. In fact, I'll end with this today. Actually, before I do, there is one other thing. This might be about as straightforward, as harsh as maybe I'll be today, but this is something that I really actually think can really help make somebody else's day better, at least not make it worse. But this is something that I've noticed that's been bothering me as we go through this. You either hear people say it or you read it on Facebook. There's a lot of good and funny stuff on there. But there's something that I think is very scary in this moment that's not going to help unite people. It's not going to make people stronger. And that's things that people are saying. The negative, unthoughtful, blanket fad statements that are being put out there that really don't have a lot of thought behind them. Let's refrain from doing that. In the words of one of my former pastors, let's not sit around spewing our ignorance of things that we don't really know and understand. Paul writes in Ephesians, he says, do not let any unwholesome talk come out of your mouths, but only what is helpful for building others up according to their needs, that it may benefit those who listen. If we're going to share something, let's stop and think before, is this really going to help people who are listening, or am I adding to the negativity and the divisiveness and all the other stuff that's already there? If we're going to make one of those blanket statements about how, well, this really only affects the so-and-so, here's what I've been asking people. If you're going to make that statement, would you make that same statement if this ended up affecting somebody in your own family and they got really sick or even died from this? Would you still make that same statement? Because if you wouldn't, I wouldn't do it now. Because somebody's being affected by it. Let's refrain from saying things that we don't actually really know or understand. Because the truth is, none of us actually know what is going on. The only ones that do are the ones that do. The ones that are actually there with the information that actually see it. Could it be a conspiracy? Maybe. Could it be a political thing? Maybe. Could it be not as serious as it really is being made out to be? Maybe. Could it be more serious than what it's made out to be? Maybe. But none of us actually know. Just the ones that really do. So instead of us just passing stuff along that we don't know, let's pray for them, and let's refrain from hurting somebody else, possibly hurting somebody else in one way or another, by spewing things of negativity or things that we just don't, our ignorance, really. And instead, let's spew love and care and compassion and affection. Again, for those of you who say you follow Jesus, James says, those who consider themselves religious and yet do not keep a tight rein on their tongue deceive themselves. And the religion is worthless. So with this in mind, maybe the best thing we can do is figure out how to be quick to listen and slow to speak, if we even need to speak at all. I understand people are hurting. We've got kids hurting, we've got teachers hurting, we've got administration hurting, we've got so many people hurting, so many people working hard, so many people trying to figure this out, and they're discouraged, and some are depressed, and some are anxious, and some are worried. Let's work through that stuff that we're feeling ourselves so that we can pray and work with those that are going through this. Let's take time to stop in this moment and recenter with our families and with ourselves on where we really are in our walk with Jesus. Let's take time to recenter and reprioritize and really look and see where our Master is. Then as he walks us through this, let's keep our eyes and our ears open to see and hear how we can help make somebody else's day better. It's possible. It can be done. I experienced it myself, and it can make a huge difference. And this is what I will end with. Tuesday, later that day, I went over to meet with Craig to talk about our meeting and start getting things set up here. And I'd been to our market here, but things were limited at the time because so many people were coming in, and they're trying their best to keep up with that. They're working hard to keep up and to keep us supplied. But I couldn't get everything, so while I was in Hayes, I decided to try and get something from Walmart and or Dillon's. It turns out I needed to do both of them because so many things are gone. You had to kind of patchwork what you needed to get set up. But here's what I noticed while I was there. I was expecting a Black Friday mentality. An end of the world apocalypse, everybody's in a bad mood and fighting each other for the last can of Spam. That's not what you got. People were giving up things that were on the shelves for somebody that looked like they needed it more. People were being positive with each other. People were having a good time with it. And in Dillon's, it took me an hour to get through the line. But it was a fun hour, just talking with the people around me, where everybody was encouraging each other through it. And then I had to go back and pick up one more thing at Walmart. And while I was there, I saw that they had bread again. And right now, bread is gold. And so I went and bought an 88-cent loaf of bread. And I had water softener salt. That's what I had to go back and get. So I got the water softener salt, I got the bread, and I went through the self-checkout there at Walmart. And I went through the process, checked myself out, got everything put through the system, took it out to my vehicle, and opened the back of my pickup, started unloading the water softener salt that I'd gotten for myself and for somebody else, and was throwing that in the back of the pickup. And I turned around to grab my bread, and it was gone. There were people walking by all the time, and my first thought was, somebody stole my bread. And I was not happy. An 88-cent loaf of bread. Does that tell you where we're at right now? When an 88-cent loaf of bread, it was bothering me that somebody took it. And I sat there in the parking lot, frustrated, finding myself getting angry, when all of a sudden it dawned on me, maybe nobody stole it. Maybe I left it when I picked everything else up. So now I found myself standing there for probably a minute or two, going, do I really go back in for an 88-cent loaf of bread to go through all of that? I realized, yeah, we probably are going to need it. But who in the world, if they saw that, man, that sucker's gone. So I walked back in, and as I was walking back in, I actually ran into a couple who, she was just going through the lines, just being as cheerful as could be, and just in a great mood, and they saw me, and they said, did you get your stuff? And I said, no, I didn't find all of it, but I said, I think I might have left my bread. And she just looked at me, and she smiled, and she goes, going back in there, aren't you? And she was just in a good mood, and she was funny. I said, yeah, I think I'm going to go, but I can't believe it's going to be there. So I was literally parked on one end of Walmart. It was at the checkout on the other end. I walked through all the stuff. I got to the other end, and I walked up, and the lady that kind of monitors the self-checkout saw me, and she said, can I help you? And I said, did anybody happen to leave a loaf of bread? And she goes, yes, they did. Because they said, somebody's going to need this. They're coming back for it. And it dawned on me that in a moment where an opportunity was there to be all about themselves, somebody said no. So it's possible for us to do this. It's possible for us to admit and walk through this. It's possible for us to recenter. It's possible for us to actually live in such a way that we do to others as we want done to us and make their day better. So let's work on that, church. Those that are part of the Waukene Church of God, let's go for it. Those that are not, I encourage you the same. I don't want to just get through this time. I don't want to just go through it. I want to grow through this. And as we've been saying all year, let this be another step to help me live a life worthy of the calling I've received from what He's given to me. I encourage you to do the same. So at this moment, sit with your family. Sorry, I just can't be short, apparently. But sit with your family, process this, talk through this for how it looks for you in your situation. And let's let God use us in ways that we never imagined during this time. Let's let Him grow us up and not just get us through it and help us to go through it, but actually help us to truly grow through this. Would you pray with me real quick and then talk when we're done? God, thank you again for just the opportunity we have to have this venue and this way of being able to communicate still. And I know at the moment it's a one-way communication at this point, but I pray that you would stop us where we are and help us to process and communicate with each other. And what those we care about are those that we're connected to, but ultimately to communicate with you. God, I pray, first of all, that you would do like you did on that day with that storm, and that you would utilize the same power that you had over that storm, over this virus that's going on. We don't need to quit praying that you would just stop this virus completely, because you have the power to do it. So first, I ask that you do that. And that while we're in the process of that happening, that you would also still use this time to lead us to a point where we become more mature and complete in you. Use this time to truly grow us in ways we've been too busy to do. So if we're struggling with some of those hard feelings that we don't want to admit, help us to admit them to you, maybe to somebody else, to ourselves, and walk through it. And then lead us to sit and see where we can recenter and reprioritize in what's most important in our lives. And then continue to open our eyes and our ears to go and look for ways that we can make somebody else's day better. Don't let the isolation, the quarantine, and all that other stuff going on keep us from still being able to spread your love to those that are around us. But instead, God, I pray that you use this to make it all the more evident and real. And we'll pray this in Jesus' name. Amen. Look this week. We'll get some more videos out. We'll introduce what's coming next in the communication. And until then, guys, have a good rest of the Sunday.